University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. And I'm wondering two things, designing the service learning. How would you differentiate the voluntary and service learning? And the second point is, how would you relate your service learning outcomes to your course objectives?
To that. So when I say community service, I mean it's a one-off kind of thing, and maybe you can engage in a community, but in my case, I focus on engineering projects, and that's what differentiates the community service from the service learning. And I showed in the presentation what are the skills that the students gain, and those are 1 through 7 outcomes for ADET as well. So part of accreditation takes into account communication. So that's part of the assessment that I do. Teamwork, right? All of that is really important. So anything in the context of applying engineering principles to that community service, for me, it's service learning. And that's a personal opinion. So anyway, that's how I do in that space.
So I just pulled up my syllabus and my outcomes because I'm that kind of person. Sorry. I got my computer in front of me, I can help myself, so I'll read you a couple of the outcomes. And then be responsive to concepts of social justice, formal and informal institutions of government, and unwritten norms that impact our legal framework. And so that's just one of them, I won't keep going with this, but I mean, I had some really specific, because I have some general ones that are on my clients, but I did some really specific work with this. And then when they did reflective exercises and they talked with people on the ground and they talked with people when they came back, this was a part of what I created a space to have that kind of deep learning.
Yeah, the other thing is in engineering, we have a product, right? So that's part of the final project. That's what I like and the students like, there's a product and they see the user. So that's really important.
Yes, thank you. Follow-up question. You mentioned about the reflective report. So yes. Is there any reflection report that students are required to write regarding that?
If you talk to my students, I make them reflect entirely too much. And they get more reflection than work and they don't understand the importance of the work. Yes, they had to reflect before, they had to reflect every other day when they were on the ground. Yes, reflection is a big part of it, and I let them do some free reflection, and then I have some very structured reflection, and that's just the nature of how I've taught for years.
And I think that reflection part is really important for the community too. In terms of when a professor goes and they're having students and they're working, and then at the end of the day when they're eating probably with the community too, or members of the community, and they're doing a reflection of what they did, you share perspective with the community and how the community feels, right? So it's not only for the academy, and you always have to have this dialogue constantly, like not only for what we have to do with our students, but we actually, I don't understand, but you actually have to engage with the community, because those people are not just the means, are not the people that are there to just go. It's like, okay, so the reflection, we love that they're part of it. And everything, they should be part of it. Not only just them just building things, but...
And thank you for making a circle, because that's...
I love circles.
Yes.
That's an spiral.
You can do that. You was just making circles.
If I can make a last comment to the service learning issue, whenever you do community service, it's like you go there and you leave, and you might never hear back from the community, but as engineers, I always instill in the students the fact that you're responsible for whatever you did and left there even after the fact. So, that is it. There's a question there.
I just have thank you for showing us how convergence works through this panel. And I wanted to throw a question at Paola. From a student perspective, what are some of the things you would like to see in the academic community you live in change or get better, or perhaps become apparent or relevant?
I think see diversity and learn from other, because when I came, for example, when I came to INESI, that I started there as part of another program, and I didn't even, consider the fact that, engineers would help me, that I would, go into the environment, or that. So I think multidisciplinarity and interdisciplinarity, I think that needs to be in everyday class, in everyday professors, in any subject or matter, or, so I would have loved to learn all of this from the first class that I started at the university for my first semester, and not just at the end of my bachelor's degree.
There's always grad school.
Yeah, I was just going to say along the lines of service learning, I think it's great as you all had examples of whether you prepared your students or the students that came in that were prepared, like 3 weeks spent learning about Puerto Rico. But I'm thinking in terms of this is something that shouldn't be an emergency situation. I'm thinking that you shouldn't have faculty and students have to sort of be crunched in an emergency situation already having to think about all these things. So I think it brings up, I think the curriculum you're talking about should be for someone in the local communities you were talking about. Really going out in local communities should have those same conversations. So it doesn't matter whether you have to be there in 2 weeks, it's an emergency situation, or it's something's over a whole semester. Yeah. It should always be sort of part of the pedagogy in the sense of what faculty do. Yeah. So I guess I'm sure you have other stories of faculty who did bring students to prepare, but my concern was, well, how prepared are the students that are doing something back in their own communities, for example? But thank you so much for that insights. More of a comment than a question, but I guess part of the question linked to that is how do you think faculty should think about always preparing students, whether it's, because we're talking about emergency situations, but I'm trying to sort of, that's a bridge really along.
I think it boils down to how well is the university, how much money it have, and like the University of Puerto Rico is broke. I was a professor 1 year, I have to quit because what they were paying me was so small amount that I said, look, I can't actually teach outside the university and create another community because obviously there I can't. And then if you don't have the means, maybe it depends on teachers, on professors that are passionate about just saying, let's go to that community to do social work. Or let's go to the like an engineer and do an engineering project there. Or, it's not something that comes from the top of the university. You don't see that. I don't know if you're more academic than I am right now. And do you feel like university is like top of saying, let's go to the communities around and let's help that everybody have a better life. And at the same time, we learn. We all learn. And put the money where you can. That's a different approach.
Right. Well, basically, so our universities actually fulfilling their own missions to do those types of things. That's a good question. Most aren't.
It's not sustainable if it's not funded.
If I might just say one thing, and then please get to your questions if I'm waiting. My name is Corey, I'm from Texas A&M, and I was concerned by the comment that a university should just do what their mission is, because in my perspective, from my perspective, a university's mission is to educate the people and to serve the people, especially if you're a land-grant institution. So I would, while I understand having to stay within certain parameters, I'd be quite concerned as a human being if my university next door, if it wasn't their mission to help me when I was in a really serious situation, I'd be greatly concerned. And that's part of what I heard this morning when some of the people were up on the stage. So I would hope that this conference teaches us how to say yes rather than but. No yes but, yes and, yes and. I apologize for
Well, good morning. Thank you very much for your presentations. I'm Margaret Alexander, Dr. Alexander from CUNY, York College in Jamaica, Queens. And hearing you, I have worked extensively in Haiti. You talk about the passion. I'm one of those who is breaking people's doors down to take students and to bring the theory from the classroom into the community. And I hear you, the curriculum. So everybody, once we develop these curriculums and we want to have service learning, from the university point of view, what's the safety issue? Was my first challenge. And, okay, who can I work with? Let's work with Travel Abroad, and we're looking at what level are they on, whether or not they're going to approve the travel. So, and all the students have to go through Title IX training so they know how to behave when they're away. So, to answer the gentleman's question about not only when it's disaster preparedness, so in order to connect the college with what I was passionate about and what I wanted my students, which are nursing students, so we save the world. It was preparing for the challenge when it came, but starting in the classroom from when they step in. So in order to show the university, look, I'm making you money, I made it into an elective course, where right now it's only nursing students and all the other departments are beating me because they want to participate. But it's a curriculum where it's wide open. They have to know the culture. They have to have some sort of education as to where they're going to. This is not a fun trip. They're working, there are X number of hours that they have to put in as part of the clinical work. Papers that have to be done before they leave, papers on the ground, a lot of reflective journaling. I did have, Manilians who decided, well, Professor, instead of writing a paper, why don't we do a documentary? So we've gone through the next step. And to put in the academic perspective, it's not only doing the work, participating, being transformative, now let's disseminate what you've learned. So I get them to do poster presentations, podium presentations. So now we're developing the leaders of tomorrow. And yes, I knock on everybody's door to get funding, and the students where some places, and I'm sorry for taking so long, Haiti has been a challenge. And we were setting up for Haiti, but couldn't go to Haiti. And we said, okay, we went to Moldova. Moldova is the poorest country in Europe per se. Haiti is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. Now let's rechange and we can do some comparative work. But the work still continues, being creative.
Yeah. To the point, it depends on where you work, and so you have to be very selective if you're going to prepare a course. Because, for example, the Haiti project took 2 years. So it took 4 times longer than we expected. And that can be a topic for a presentation itself. Because we had people die during the process. Not but the agents, to ship all the equipment. But so it would take 2 years. So the students that started the project graduated and left before it was over. And then sometimes the job is not glamorous, I have a group of students go to Brazil work in the favelas. And that's not something that all the students want to do. So they need to understand that it's a dangerous situation that they're putting themselves in. Just understand the risks.
Thank you all for your panel. My name is Cassandra Shepard. I'm from Bates College, and my research is on disaster and rebuilding after Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. So I appreciate that you all are thinking about and talking about challenges right now. And I wanted to ask you all, it seems as though you're describing communities that were open to receiving help. But in my community that I research, there's there's resistance from the community because they've seen so many colleges and researchers come out. They've received inefficient projects sometimes, unfinished projects that take up money that don't get completed or that aren't really useful. People take their stories and then make careers out of them without changing material circumstances. And so I think my community suffered from fatigue in some ways. So I wanted to know if you all saw any of that in the field, and if you could talk about, you know, just trying to maneuver through that.
I saw it when we went to La Shora with them, that first there were people that never let us come in, and there were people that accepted it. But I had to sit down first with the organization we were working for, because I didn't know the community myself. I'm from Puerto Rico, I know my community, but I didn't know that community. So if I didn't know that community, how was I going to, you know, expect to be let in? So I had to sit down. So it's important to have a resource that knows the community, that can approach, that can sit down, that they want to come to help. They are coming for several days. They are going to do as much as they can. You know, we didn't make any promises. We didn't, you know, they were there to not just to help, like Cecilia said, they were there to collaborate with them. So once the community understood that, you know, they accepted it, you know, they let them in their homes, and at the end they were part of the family, because Puerto Ricans, we are like that. We make everyone part of our family. So, you know, but that was really important, to sit down, to let the community understand what they were doing, and to let them know what they were doing, and to let them know that the community was skeptical about them, so they needed to be careful with that.
I'm going to jump in because I was part of that coordination, and it's very important to set expectations before starting anything. Understand where you're coming from, where you're adding, if any. Be real about it. If you are adding value, what is the value? Define your own value. Be okay in saying, I don't add value to your work. That is also true. I mean, be critical in what you're bringing to the table. I mean, be critical whether I'm actually adding value to your situation or to your project or to what you're doing or your initiative. So think about this before doing anything. Like, what are you bringing, and make sure that people understand and see people as equals in the process. Don't come from the Olympus. Actually go down and maybe even make yourself below them and try to push them up instead of just bringing, like, retrieving information. Like, see yourself, be critical with who you are in the process. Be critical with your own value adding to the projects, and I would say that would set a very healthy stage to any project. Because if you're understanding what is in there and you see where you're coming with and from, people will see it too. And be honest in the process, be vulnerable as well. Don't think that you cannot change in the process, and let people know this as well. Because it's also important, if you're vulnerable in the process, you're letting them know that you're not perfect and you're not bringing a perfect project. And your project will not be perfect, and that's fine. So setting the right expectation up front, it's very helpful. So people, like she was saying, I mean, what's the scope of the project? We can come up to this point. Is this valuable for you? Okay, so it's like a set an agreement. Like, where do we work together? How can we collaborate together? I mean, what am I bringing to the table? You're going to work with me also. I mean, set the stage for the whole thing so people can see the whole project beforehand and understand it. And that's very valuable, so you avoid people like creating illusions of something that never happened. And I've seen that so much. It's very annoying for people. And people get a fatigue from it because they're fighting for something that will never come. And you yourself are coming with a project, you're seeing too much of it and it's not really there. So being true to your own project in the process is very important, and letting people know that you understand that it's not really that big. It could be big, but it's okay if it's not, right? So I think being honest, vulnerable, and letting people know that works.
And I I'm happy to talk with you offline about the research that I did, about the work that various clinics did, legal clinics did post-Katrina, and how, what I found in my research and how they didn't concretize as much as they hoped to have time to do. So I had to rebuild some stuff, and what I'm hoping to do with my participation in this and helping people understand and think through. So let's find each other and I'll tell you.
When in my neighborhood, there's plenty of leaders, and they are actually two organizations that doesn't talk to each other. One is Aregma and one is Los Paradores. They're from there. They've been for 50 years, and so I grew up there, and then I left for 18 years, and then I came back after Hurricane Maria. And we started organizing, and there was just this wall, you know? And for several, like, they don't trust the other one, and the other one doesn't trust them. So what I did was, like, I started talking to each other separately, completely, like going to their houses, paying them a beer, just drinking, like, you know, yeah, that's, you know, some moonshine involved in this organization process. That's, you know, you talk with your heart. And I'm not gonna compromise that for somebody else that I don't know. You know? So somebody has to gain the trust. And you have to ask yourself, why do you want to help? Why would you want to go over there? Is it for yourself? For a project for yourself? Is this the ego that is saying, you know, I want to do this, I want to be the superhero? You really want to help somebody? Like, I think about the story of the Principito, the Little Prince, when the Zorro, you know, he was waiting for him, like trying to domesticate him, the Zorro, and the Zorro tells the Principito, no, you have to come, if you want to domesticate me, you know, you have to come every day at the same hour, and I'm going to wait for you. And sometimes what I did was like going at the same time to the house. Or just like, you know, building that trust. How are you going to build it? Why will you want to build it? Are you staying there? You want to grow up a project? That's a question.
Oh, I'm from New Orleans, and
yeah.
This is where my research is.
Okay.
And I feel as though, because I'm kind of on the inside, I'm able to connect with people more, but I also have been there for so long that I see some people who are interview participants and just people in general push away certain projects and people and NGOs and stuff. And so I'm about to have a class go down for service learning. And so I'm thinking about, you know, how to have them to do things in the community when the community is fatigued from having so many people there. You know, and I have the inside track, so like you said, you know, I can make those kinds of connections, but I still feel kind of iffy knowing that these people have been exploited so much by universities, and here I come bringing them a class. Like, we want to help, you know? And so you know.
It's your commitment with them. It's a relationship with them.
I think part of it is being honest and letting them know. I know that you feel, you know, you might feel this way, but let them know why you want to do that and why you want to bring your students, and also let them know how they can help your students. Like, not only be like there's, you know, your students will be saving the community, but how the community can help the students grow, you know, better as persons and professionals. And that will be important for them to know the value of their collaborations.
Just to add to that, I think when we were there, the community watching us, we hired somebody to deliver our food who was from the community. Like, everything we did was trying to give our own resources back to the community to help us sustain what we were doing. And then I think after a while they started seeing it, that even the church came out and wanted to do a blessing for us. They made rosary beads for us. We did. So you started building that trust with the community, and it was a beautiful thing to see that over time. In a matter of days, like, it started getting much more comfortable. We became that team.
Last question before we go out there.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, and my name is Christine, I'm her mom, that there's an element of reciprocity that I found that I often saw a lot lacking when I would receive requests from academics or researchers that wanted for me to take my time to sit down and tell my story, that I would just encourage that kind of additional level of thinking of what can I contribute? And I remember I asked this to someone who emailed me, and she said, after a while, she said, Bill, I don't have a budget, right? We have to be thinking about this institutionally. There should be money to contribute to whatever community you're going to. And the person then said, well, I could help you with grant writing, or I could help you with editing. And these are things that you do all the time, that in a community setting, especially after a disaster, there will be a lot of. And thinking creatively about what kind of support you can contribute as someone who is communicating and writing constantly is an asset that maybe doesn't come to mind immediately. But that was not exactly what I was going to say. What I was going to share is, Luis talked about curriculum. I think how we do curriculum matters. I think that is extremely important, and what we're looking at Emerge Puerto Rico is we go to see what it is that worked in the communities, what kind of leadership traits were exhibited by leaders on the ground, community leaders on the ground, and building the curriculum from the bottom up, and honoring and recognizing the wisdom of the communities, that there's no process for bringing in that knowledge into the institution. We have to recognize in this conference and future conferences that it is the wisdom of communities that will save humanity. Because they are the ones that have the expertise, they're the experts. And so that's what we're trying to figure out, and this is more a comment than an invitation to think about how do we create a process that's fair, that also will be giving resources to the communities instead of being extractive, that is lifting where everyone is on the same table. So with that, thank you.
Okay, that was the question I was going to make. I don't know if we have 5 more minutes to do the last question for all of them. Basically, in terms of what we have talked about in your experience, what would you think is the most important change that universities could do precisely to be more fair to communities and be able to teach better about disasters, but not only disasters, about the importance of community in facing challenges and disasters. So, go ahead. Who wants to start?
I think that we need to prepare students for the worst and hope for the best. I think, at times I've prepared really, really well, other times not as good. So what I do is a list of everything that can go wrong, and then make the contacts with the community, because I know that they will be the ones that will help me solve the issue. So if a solar panel breaks, who can I go to? If communication breaks, who could be the mediator? Because I'm from the outside, and in Puerto Rico, especially politics, like the mayor was talking to me until he found out that the other person from the Chamber of Commerce who is running against him was helping me as well, and that communication was broken there. So I had to find someone to join. So I think it's important about preparedness, but not alone, but connecting with the community and seeing who in the community provides that level of expertise and leadership that can help you. So you have to know the community before you go there.
And I think after that, don't wait for a disaster. It's look around you.
Yeah.
Look around the university.
Yeah.
Probably there's somebody that's living in the, somewhere in the street, and nobody in the university is not doing nothing. So I think connecting the geographical community and start creating a more engagement and participation of the university, and how can they help those problems. But at the same time, if there's you want to help somebody else and on the other side of the world, just look for another peer, right? Like that are right there. And that's what is beautiful about the university. There are so many relationships around, professors and the programs. And so you can't wait until the disaster just comes. It's like build the network, build the relationship with people so you can be strong, so then you can just like help the university that is right there and say, how can we, all this power that we have, how can we help these people and be aware of what they're doing to them.
I think we were speaking earlier about professors having to give the extra mile to engage in community, because it's not the university's mission to engage with the community or a present or active mission. So I think it should be a present and active mission, and professors shouldn't have to give the extra mile. They should be encouraged and encourage their students, and not just make, for example, in my West, most engineers do their work around around hypotheticals. They make simulations. Yeah, theory and simulations, and we have the opportunity and the approach to not make hypotheticals and simulations, to go there and do the work. So.
From my perspective, I think what this few years has taught me is I thought I was pretty decent at teaching cultural competence, and I now know that I'm still not good at it, but I recognize the importance of it and getting better. And I think that cultural competence involves the community connections, involves transforming the thoughts of how we do our work and how we create new lawyers or new whatever we're creating and be part of what we're doing. And so being okay with being a learner alongside my students and reaching and asking for help.
Thank you so much. Well, I want to thank you so much for this panel. I think each one of us learned a lot from your experiences and from what all of the shared. So thank you so much for being with us today. And now, the moment. So now it's time for a lunch. I think ours is in the ballroom, if I'm not mistaken. So we can thank you so much for being with us.